Welcome to Construct Tech TV. Today I have a very special tech update for you. I'm going to identify the top tech trends that came out of the 2017 InterDrone show. It was a really exciting show, and this includes everything you need to know about the regulations, secrets to operating a drone, go big or go small, growth predictions, and a fun fact I bet you probably don't know. First up, let's talk about drone regulations. There was certainly a lot of chatter on the InterDrone show floor about all the changes in drone regulations. The small UAS rule, also known as Part 107, came into effect on August 29, 2016. These regs actually create new opportunities for business and government to use drones safely. So let's see what Chris Carodi, principal of DroneBusiness.Center, has to say what you need to know.
Suddenly, as a business, a construction company or a design firm or a builder, you are operating an aircraft in national airspace. And that's something that most people don't have experience with, that a lot of people find kind of overwhelming, because Part 107 puts a lot of burden on the individual to comply, to be safe, to make good decisions. And I think that's, wrapping your head around that is difficult.
As you all know, drones are certainly becoming very important to the construction job site. And at the InterDrone show, I spoke with a number of drone pilots in construction. One of these was Chan An, construction engineer of the Hawaiian Dredging Construction Company. He brought up a great point that all construction companies might want to consider when operating drones near cranes. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Especially one of those things you really have to care for when you're flying during a construction site is a crane. Actually, we have 3 cranes, and 2 tower cranes and 1 mobile crane, which goes up to 0 to 4,000, over 4,000 feet. And we're in the airspace that I cannot fly a drone any higher than 400 feet. So that's a lot of risk, actually, because you're not like looking at the drone at the same level. You're on the ground and looking at the drone to the top and crossing your fingers if it's gonna hit the crane or not. So it's kind of scary sometimes, but it's fun to do with it.
A big trend we saw happening at the InterDrone show was many drone companies were looking to go small. But brothers Joel and James Egan of the Egan Airships said small is not always the way to go. Rather, the bigger the drone, the greater the safety and data capture. Check out their big comments.
So what you're trying to say here is you guys are saying that you can do things more stably, you can do more coverage, you can give longer flights here. Is this what you're trying to do? The ability that you could say you have a better range and distance for things and give coverage that maybe other things can't. A smaller drone isn't going to be able to reach, is what you're saying.
Correct. Range and coverage, and it's safer. That is, when we are unpowered, we drop about the speed of a parachutist, and that is really important. When you have important tools and devices on your drone you don't want to lose, then you know that's very valuable.
So will drones really substantially grow in the next few years? Colin Snow, founder and CEO of SkyLogic Research, has some very interesting predictions. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Well, there's a potential growth. So people look at the total addressable market and they say, well, there's $11.3 billion worth of capability and value that drones can add. But when we actually talk to companies, we find that it's hard to put a number on it because many companies are not doing it for the things that I described. They're actually putting drones in place because of safety. Because what drones do is help those on site understand where things are built or where things are going to change. It helps the planning managers understand where they need to keep people out of harm. So actually what we see is that safety is actually the number one. So there's obviously a value on the human life and value on, we see the statistics from OSHA, right, on the number of falls in the construction industry, and actually one of the largest industries where there are accidental deaths. So people are looking at it first in terms of its safety value.
Finally, I have a fun fact for you. Did you know that drones are a no-no in casinos? In fact, if you attempt it, you and your drones will be kicked out. Go figure. So if you and your drones are heading to Las Vegas anytime soon, you just might want to leave them at home. So that's our and your tech update for today. Job site safety is a top priority for construction managers. Producing risk at the job site is a full-time job, and it all starts by creating a culture of safety. Here to chat with me is Kevin Graves, Senior Safety Advocate at Assurance. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Peggy.
So Kevin, let's talk about this. What are some of the most common, I think, ways to reduce risk at the job site? And I think you know probably better than most on that.
Yeah, so at Assurance Agency, we have the unique ability to have loss runs from different contractors, which gives us an idea already of some of the loss history that a client already has. And that way we can start tailoring some of our training efforts towards minimizing those losses. So just from starting with the client, I'm able to go ahead and perform specific training to some of the hazards that they might encounter on a job site.
So when you think about that, when you look at some of that and you say some of the losses and help them with training, what does that entail?
Well, a lot of it is just going out to the job site and meeting with the individuals. So a lot of what we do is just doing site inspections, which is just a mock inspection. So in case OSHA were to show up on site, they're already prepared for the worst case scenario. You know, they say that a lot of the OSHA standards are written in blood because of the fact that when they wrote the standards in the 1970s, there were no standards before that. And you know, as we know, construction was still going on. So we start there with the OSHA standards, and then that way we've already got a good idea just based on their exposures on the job site when we go there, and then tailoring our training efforts to that.
When we think about these OSHA standards and inspections, you know, what areas do you think are the most important, or does OSHA consider the most important for inspections?
Well, it really depends on the client, but given that the OSHA Focus 4, the two major ones are the fall protection and the struck bys, so we do really focus on, for any contract that's doing any sort of elevated work surface area work, to make sure that they're tied off and they understand the proper fall protection requirements on a job site. I work with the residential framing contractor, a concrete contractor, a roofing contractor, and those contractors especially, because of their hazards with their work, they must tie off 100%.
You know, the fall in between, when they talk about that, the numbers are astronomical sometimes. And so when you go there, you would think sometimes they don't do enough. And I mean, do the numbers sometimes when you go there and you say some of these things that they've done because they don't do the right things are almost like you want to say, how does that happen, right? I mean, you see the numbers and you go, how do they keep repeating those accidents?
Yeah, and unfortunately right now we have such, well, I guess I shouldn't say unfortunately, we have so much work right now, and it's great in the Chicagoland area.
So it's a wonderful thing,
everybody's back to work, so you know, when we have this much work, it's harder for clients to make sure that they've got all the right training for all their employees. And there's people that are getting pulled out of all different sectors in the industry that are now doing construction work that just don't have the background and experience. So it's really up to the employers and then actually up to us as well to help them with that training. And I think that's where a lot of the fall protection statistics come from, are the untrained employees or the younger employees that do not have the experience that some of the older employees do.
That's an interesting point. Do you think now, because things are back to work, that there's a lot of people that are going back to the job site because they're not being trained because there is so much work now?
Yes, that is definitely the case. You know, we work with some residential clients, and in that sector alone, it's been a very challenging thing because a lot of these subdivisions that had kind of been abandoned in the 2008, 2009 area because of the economy, they're now being finished. And at the same time, the construction sector and the commercial area has also been booming. So we've got the shortage of work coming in, or I'm sorry, of personnel to do the work. So it's been very challenging just making sure that we've got the people trained that can perform that work.
So we've kind of got it like this double-edged sword right now. So what are, for all those who are watching, what's the best steps that we need to take so these job sites are safe? Because the best thing we want is we want all these workers to go home to their families at night. Safe culture, right?
Right, yeah. So we want to make sure that we've got a sound safety program. And it starts at the employee onboarding process, that they are training their employees prior to getting onto the job site, that they're going through an orientation program that is specific to their operations. After that, it's making sure that you're mentoring the employees and checking up on them frequently and oftenly to ensure that they understand all the hazards of their work and that they're getting all the controls. So the inspection process is also tied in with that. And then, of course, on-the-job training. Me as a safety professional, I can do training that's kind of a bigger picture type training, like fall protection, but when we're talking about like nail guns in specific, that's something that as an experienced carpenter, we would expect them to kind of lead that training path for the younger, unexperienced carpenter to make sure that they understand all the hazards associated with their tools. So there's a lot that can be done just with the mentorship ability on the job sites too.
Are we talking about big dollars here when they're not doing proper training, and job site losses when they're not taking the time to do training, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you do have a significant loss, you might have to call OSHA, because if an employee is hospitalized, you have to call OSHA within 24 hours. Now, if that is the case and they determine that you didn't train your employee after they come out on site, you have a large sum of citation that could be coming your way. Anywhere from up to $12,000 for a series citation to $120,000 if it's a repeat. So there are a lot of dollar amounts, and this is all outside of the insurance aspect with the cost of an injury that could be happening on a job site, because we all know that just the cost of an injury can be significant.
So if we think about this, Kevin, it's really important for these companies to take the necessary time to just train. Remind them in the morning what they have to do, the safety steps they need to take, right? These things that you're talking about are so really vitally important, so that our job site workers, young, older, get refresher courses so they get home to their families at night.
Yeah, so whatever you want to call it, daily hazard analysis, daily task analysis, daily huddle, it all means the same thing. Spend like 5 minutes in the morning talking through with your crew any hazards they might encounter, and then all controls for those hazards. So you're spending the time right there at the beginning of the day before they report to their work area to make sure that they know exactly what they're going to do and they know the controls for that.
Are there, just quickly, we've got just about a minute to go here, are there some things that at the job site, each job site's unique, that they might do that daily huddle that you say, hey, there's something unique about this site we should think about and go over as that daily huddle to maybe protect every worker on that job site?
Yeah, any critical activity that might expose other contractors on site. Like, let's say there's a critical pick going on a job site where you're going to have a large 300-ton crane on site that's going to pick an air handler unit to the roof. That could affect everyone on the job site. We want to make sure people are away from those areas. Setting precasts, doing structural steel. There's a lot of things that not only do the contractors performing the work need to be aware of, but everyone else. So there's definitely a notification process that needs to be in place too for all the other trades to notify any sort of higher risk activities happening on the site that they're performing or anyone else is performing, just to ensure that they're not entering these protected work areas.
Kevin, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, and that's our safety zone for today. Last week, I spoke with Bert Hurlbut, Vice President of New Hospital Construction at the Stanford Healthcare, about the new Stanford Hospital. This week, I'll take you inside the project. Chad Reeder, Controls Manager with the new Stanford Hospital, took me on a tour and the entire ConstructTech team of the hospital. Let's take a look. I'm here right now with Chad Reeder, who's the Control Manager of the new Stanford Hospital. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So, Chad, I'm really looking forward. We're going to head out right now, and you're going to take me on a tour?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go do it.
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. Chad, tell us a little bit about what you have right here.
So this is our parking structure, and on top of our parking structure, 900-car parking structure, we have what we call our garden roof. So this is basically a office building with a garden on the roof of the structure that will actually blend into the hospital once we are finished with it. And I forget what the current acreage for this roof is, but combined with the hospital, it's 2.1 acres of garden roof between the parking structure and the hospital.
It's a pretty magnificent view right now.
It's a magnificent view. We're in the city of Palo Alto and in the Bay Area. As you can see around, we have the, I believe it's the Santa Cruz Mountains to our west, and we have the bay to our east. And we haven't even gotten to the prize yet, which is the hospital. So.
All right, let's go check out the rest of it.
Excellent. We're on the helistop. This is where patients who are airlifted into the hospital will be dropped off. Behind us over here is what we call the trauma tower. We have elevators that go directly down to the emergency department. And so what I call these is our miracle floors. I mean, what Stanford's going to do once we're done, I mean, absolutely, it's miracles. The technology they can do, the curing of patients in here is absolutely amazing. And as you can see, there's enough support around here. We have 5 booms per every OR to support the equipment to do that for the doctors. So we have 20 ORs. And then we added a program system called a DBS, deep brain stimulation, which potentially has the ability possibly to fix something like Alzheimer's or something. A lot of research going in that direction, a lot of brain issues. And then something relatively new is what they call the iMRI, the interoperable MRI, which basically allows a lot of neurosurgeries to put a person into an MRI immediately, almost during surgery, so they can make sure they have everything if they stop the bleeding and things like that in the brain, as opposed to our imaging is on first floor. Otherwise, you'd have to sew the patient up, put them in an elevator, get them down there, wait, come back. So it speeds up the time for this.
Chad, let's talk a little bit about how technology now is going to be helping with patient care and how it's changed from how the hospital was originally built to how this new hospital is going to help patients.
Sure. So I have an example. My daughter had a fractured femur. So when the hospital was originally built with a fractured femur, you would have spent 6 weeks in traction, followed by about 3 months in a cast. Then you would have started physical therapy, and eventually you may have went home a little bit after that. She was actually in and out of the hospital within a day, and walking on it within a day, because now instead of tearing you all open, going in there and just redoing it, they can do with basically image guided. They can go in and take care of the issue. Much quicker, much smaller surgery, much quicker surgery, as well as having everything integrated, all the technology integrated here, and having basically an OR like this that allows that surgery to happen.
One of the things you said to me when we weren't on camera is if you were a patient, this is the hospital you'd want to be. Is that how you really feel?
Absolutely. Miracles happen here. Absolutely. The things they do, the doctors here are absolutely amazing. And again, with this technology here, the ability to now look inside the body without opening you up is absolutely amazing.
And one of the things that I think most people don't realize and construction workers understand is what's behind the walls, and that you're building as a construction company. Talk a little bit about that, because that's what's really most amazing.
Absolutely. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you basically had a big mechanical system that supported the hospital. Now you basically have this massive IT backbone that supports this whole hospital. You know, everywhere you look around here, this is connected to the network. Everything is interconnected all over. So this is where everything is real time happening, and it's just, again, it's absolutely pretty amazing and how quick the information can be. The
amazing part for you and is all the subs and the trades have to work together, have to use technology to work together, to communicate, to make this work And it doesn't seem like a timely fashion, but you can't build a project like this without working together. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. All the subs have to coordinate everything. From basically the lead will be the framers that come in and lay the walls down, and then you have to have your MEPs come in behind them and put everything into the walls. And then at the end of the day, you got your framers come back to put the sheetrock on. So if they're not working together, we looked over on the other wall as we walked up here, we saw us using last planning, V-planner, basically some pool planning, putting all the trades together in a room and making them work together to basically schedule our project.
What was the biggest hurdle you thought about this project that you had to overcome?
Getting it permitted, keeping the design ahead of construction. Again, since we have to permit so early because of the requirements from the state of California, a lot of times our permits come out with equipment that's 5-10 years old, and we have to, since we are Stanford, we have to have the latest and greatest here. So we're constantly trying to change the drawings as minimal as possible. Unfortunately, it's not always the case, so we can get the latest equipment in this hospital.
Well, Chad, thank you for spending time with us and giving us a tour today on someone you should know.
We'll continue on that topic next week. We will discuss BIM, data, tablets, and everything needed to coordinate a project of this magnitude. But for this week, that's someone you should know, or as I've been saying, that's something you should know. I hope you've enjoyed this amazing tour as much as we have. Stick around next week as we have more to share. Sensors are allowing for new avenues of data aggregation in drones. During my time at InterDrone, I caught up with Jeff Freund, Vice President of Enterprise Construction Solutions at Precision Hawk. He explains how these small integrations are driving new methods of surveying on the job site. Let's listen to what he had to say.
You guys are all about sensors in construction, so you're like an expert on all this stuff, and now we're talking drones. What do we got to talk about today?
We're going to talk about what Precision Hawk is doing in the construction space itself and integrating the sensors and capturing better data to make our clients give them more information, better information, so they can make better decisions and increase their revenues.
You know what? You said two very important things. Get more information and increase revenues. Those are two very valuable things for the construction industry. And that's something right now, when you talk about percentage and points and dollars so minimal in construction, we have to do that. How are sensors and what you guys are doing at Precision Hawk helping them do that?
I think just we're able to capture data with the drones much quicker than traditional methods. For example, like survey methodologies, cut the survey downtime to about 50%. So there's obviously cost savings just in the man hours alone. But the data we're actually capturing as well is 50 times better than the data they're getting from today's methods as well. So the more data that we can give them that's better, they can derive better decision making out of that and with their engineering teams, especially on the construction projects.
So how are you doing that? I mean, what exactly are you able to do that cuts it 50%? That's a pretty significant number when you think about that.
It's just the platform itself. So you're throwing a drone up there versus sending a team of 2 to 3 guys, surveyors in the field. And the drone is doing that work for them. So 1 or 2 guys with the drone, but the drone is able to capture the entire area in far less time than you can with a traditional survey.
So give me an example. So if somebody's watching right now says, I'm still not quite sure I understand exactly what you're doing. So walk me through it.
So your traditional, for a survey project, say you're doing a roadway construction project, you're going to want to do a stakeout and a survey of that project. Today you'll go out there with your manual survey with your total stations, put your stakes in the grounds, and the guys are going to be bouncing off there and doing the work with that equipment today. The time it takes to set that up, you can have the drone in the air and capture the data ready and upload it to the cloud, and you can have that sharing with your office, with your construction office, who's doing the work or the design drawings for that project, for example. So rather than getting the traditional survey, which takes time to process and then take it back to the office, using the drones and using the different sensors that we have, you can get that information almost in real time.
So are you doing this by yourself? You have partners? How do you end up doing all this information that you're talking about?
We're capturing the data ourselves and with partners, so we don't need to be doing all of the flights. We have a lot of different partners that fly. A lot of our clients are construction companies that have their own pilots on staff that are flying their projects and sharing the information with us, and we're able to process the data for them.
So when we look at all this information today and you look at the construction companies, are construction companies starting to embrace the concept of looking at what the data they're gathering, looking at how drones are making their job sites safer, quicker, workflow, processes, collecting all this information and collaborating with BIM? They're really taking all of this seriously now?
I think that we're finally getting there. Yeah, a lot of the construction industry is pretty slow to change as far as on the technology side. More and more, I think big majority, I would assume 50% or more, are integrating or playing with drones in their organizations. There's still a lot of opportunity to integrate the drone data, and that's what we're talking about. Our collaboration we have with McCarthy Construction, we're looking at how can we take this aerial imagery and create automatically 3D as-built models. How can we integrate this data with 4D models and the BIM models with the different Autodesk platforms or MicroStation Tekla? How can we use this data? It's all data in the end, right? And if we can give them much more better information again and automatically start to recreate the projects for them, I think it's that's going to be the game changer as we look at that in the next, probably 18 to 24 months.
So what is McCarthy and you learned so much in your partnership with that you've done with them so far as they're testing this out and really using, Precision Hawk and what you're seeing so far?
What we learned so far is that there's so much more than just doing the aerial video and taking aerial photography of a construction site. That's what's being done today, and it's great. It's great data. But using machine learning and trying to explore with machine learning how we can actually improve job site safety, how we can look at maybe potential, construction material laydown areas on construction sites, and identify, with the machine learning project after project, how you can start to improve that and improve efficiencies on site. And that's where the contractor is going to make his increase his bottom line on the projects by reducing the risk and stuff on the project.
Where do you see this all headed now? You've testing this all out, doing this now. How long have you been doing it with McCarthy now?
McCarthy has been about the last 3 months, so we just got started with them back in June. And we're looking to, as they're flying more and more projects now from different project stages, we're looking at solar anomaly reports, some of their solar construction projects that they have. We're looking at university projects with them of doing just as the site condition assessments, and just looking at how we can, what we're going to be developing with them and with integration with the as-built models. That we're still at the beginning forefront of that, but we got a pretty big software development team back in Raleigh that's eager to get started. So.
And looking at this going forward, where do you see the next phase of all of this looking at sensors, looking at what you're doing at sites, where do you see the next big evolution?
I think but when we figure out the integration of the 3D, 4D models with aerial imagery and recreate digital models from the pictures, I think that's where going to be a game changer in the industry, potentially 2 to 3 years from now, as we use more drones more and more. I really believe that by 2018, every construction site should have a drone on it, and that safety officer or that project manager should be using it, be it weekly progress reports for back to substantiating his invoicing, be it safety inspections, health and safety, be it pre and post storms, floods that may happen on site, of inventory on site. The cost point is so low and the benefits are so high that every construction site should have that.
There's no doubt drones are getting smarter. Are you taking advantage of that? That's your Innovation in Tech for today. While pilots are doing much of the heavy lifting, drones are also establishing a mind of their own. I had the pleasure of meeting up with Jesse Clayton, Senior Manager of Product for Intelligent Machines from NVIDIA, while I was on the road at InterDrone. He discussed how artificial intelligence and machine learning are taking drones to new heights.
So let's talk about, you guys are really doing some amazing things, and one of the things now, we're going to talk about AI and deep learning. I love that because, when you think about construction, that isn't something that they have been into for a long time. And this is all pretty, a lot of novice kind of folks in the construction industry. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it's important to take a step back and sort of understand the broader trend that's happening in the industry right now. Modern artificial intelligence and specifically deep learning is making it possible to solve problems that haven't been practically solvable before. And there's really three things that have made this possible. The first is big data, the second is algorithms, and the third is GPUs from NVIDIA. It's such a powerful technology that it's impacting almost every industry. It's able to solve problems in industries like healthcare, financial services, and also in construction. So NVIDIA has built a product called Jetson, and Jetson is NVIDIA's platform for artificial intelligence at the edge. Jetson can take the power of artificial intelligence, bring it into the size and power envelope that can fit onto a drone platform and be applied to applications like construction, like industrial inspection.
So when we think about that, when we look at industrial inspection right now, that's a pretty powerful thing because that's something construction companies thinking about the job site and what they can do, one for safety, one for getting workflows done more efficiently. But what do you see what you guys are doing that you've looked at even deeper than that?
Sure. So we see a lot of people doing inspection of existing infrastructure, like bridges, like cell towers, like wind turbines. And these drones are capable of autonomously flying around the thing that needs to be inspected and determining where there are faults in this piece of equipment or this piece of infrastructure. The same thing can be done with building construction or other structures that are being added onto or built in process. Another application within construction is monitoring the progress of the construction itself. So monitoring the aggregates to see how much is being used, is it keeping up with what we expect to happen? Also monitoring the equipment that's on site as well. Are these pieces of equipment being utilized as much as they should be, doing the things that we expect them to be doing?
Well, we have a lot of pieces of equipment out there that sit idle. So are we looking at this to say now we might see equipment that maybe we didn't realize isn't being used effectively or efficiently in places, because sometimes you never think about it. There's pieces of equipment we forget are on job sites. We don't even know where they are sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, all of these pieces of equipment are very expensive, and if they're just sitting idle, they're not really generating any value for the construction operator itself. And so being able to more effectively monitor these sites and monitor what these pieces of equipment are doing can really generate a lot of opportunities to capture more value for the construction.
One of the things you mentioned is big data. When we talk about that in construction, a lot of people get confused what that means. What do you kind of interpret that to mean for construction companies who are trying to understand the two terms there, you know, two words, big and data?
Yeah. Well, this new model of deep learning, computing with deep learning, it's different in that instead of a programmer programming the computer what to do, instead the model is you're training a neural network on the task that you want it to do. Now this requires a lot of data, and in fact companies that have a lot of data are more easily able to train those neural networks to do these different tasks. So you take your very large data set, say you're doing things like monitoring a piece of construction equipment like a truck. Teach the neural network what the truck is, what the activities that truck is normally doing and what they look like, and from that process it can learn to generalize and track what that truck is doing and more effectively optimize the process.
Do you think over time we'll see more construction companies embracing this faster than we've seen up to this point, or do you think it's still going to take some time for everyone to really embrace, you know, deep learning as you described, big data, and all the three elements that you talked about from the beginning of our conversation?
I think what you're starting to see is there are companies that are demonstrating how valuable this technology can be. And once they're able to show that and these construction companies are able to see that, I think we'll see a dramatic acceleration in the use of deep learning to solve problems in this space.
Have you seen the adoption of drones now as one indication that construction companies are really taking all this technology to the next level in a much greater way than they've ever done before?
Yeah, so one of the companies that we work with is a company called Skycatch, and they've deployed deep learning to address the construction site management problem. They have partners in construction that are working to more effectively streamline the operations on these construction sites. Now, of course, drones have the ability to go places and to get vantage points that people can't, and so taking that capability, adding deep learning and artificial intelligence really creates a lot of opportunities.
Are there other companies you're working with in the construction industry right now that you feel good that are really adopting some of this that you're talking about?
So Skycatch is the one that we're working most closely with today. There are a lot of startups and a lot of companies that we're working with that haven't been announced yet, and so I expect you'll see a lot of that.
I was trying to get you some of that out of there, secrets out there. What do you see right now? What's your big prediction for the future in the drone market, NVIDIA, and what you see kind of happening as we look ahead?
You know, I think looking out into the future, what we're going to see is a transition from drones that are able to focus on tasks that require a pilot or require navigation via GPS, for instance, to ones in which the drones are acting much more autonomously. So they're able to fly themselves, but also carry out tasks themselves. Now, these can be very challenging problems. Navigation in particular, especially in areas that are GPS denied or where the mapping of the area, like a construction site, hasn't been done already. So the ability of a drone using artificial intelligence can solve some of those challenges. In fact, NVIDIA just launched a framework today called Redtail. What Redtail is an artificial intelligent and AI accelerated navigation software framework to enable drones to more effectively navigate in these cluttered, in these unmapped, in these GPS denied environments. So we see our customers taking advantage of frameworks like Redtail to give their drones many more capabilities than they have today.
It's exciting to say the intelligence is here, and it's time to tap into it. That's our On the Road. BIM is expected to grow by almost 22% between 2016 and 2022. It can help with constructability, analysis, logistics purposes, and even job site planning. But will it integrate with all your drones? To answer that question and so much more, I sat down with Chris Carodi, Principal for DroneBusiness.Center, and Colin Snow, CEO of SkyLogic Research at InterDrone. Let's hear what they had to say. So Colin, let's talk a little bit about how BIM is being used at the construction job sites, because for the past 10 years we've had BIM, and everybody's talked about the miraculous changes BIM's going to do, but not a whole lot has changed in 10 years. But now, are we finally going to see BIM and collaboration finally happening at the construction job site and workflows improving things?
Yeah. Well, so I can talk about where drones fit in that, and I can talk about what we've seen from the use cases in the companies we've talked to, like BAC and a few of the other larger and even smaller firms that are using drones as part of the reality capture. So understanding the plan versus as is. So in the BIM, in a big model where you're trying to bring together your CAD versus, what's happening on the ground, and you want to put that together in some kind of a workflow. Drones add a real great tool for understanding the. So when we talk about it in the phases of construction. We talk about planning, and we talk about the actual construction, then we talk about the maintenance, and then we talk about the deconstruction. So in the planning phase, sort of where drones are being used in the BIM process is to understand the context for, let's say, a reconstruction. Let's say I'm adding a wing to a hospital, and I want to get a sense of how that new wing will look. So the drone gives you a perspective, so I can fly above and look down onto the property and the surrounding neighborhood, so I get some context for what that building will look like. So I'm in the planning stage and I'm selling this, right, as part of my marketing material, as part of a community outreach. I can show now versus what it'll look like in the future. So that's one part of it then. And then in the construction phase, right, I have my CAD drawings, I have my things, and, kind of the old way was, you plan it and you throw it over the wall and then you give it to the construction crew.
You hope
and then,
something's going to happen.
Yeah, you hope something's going to happen. You hope it's going to happen right. So in the BIM model, right, the BIM and drones and having that access to that information, now I can continually look at the progress of the plan versus actual, and I can understand where is there rework that needs to be done? Was the pour done right? Is there enough rebar? Is the piping going in the right place? So all throughout the phases, right? Even looking down on top and people are doing this on a daily basis. They're taking drones up and they're taking that capture and putting it back on top of the CAD drawings and layering that. So we think drones are a great tool because it's easy to do. You take off from the ground, you go up, you do your capture. In 5 or 10 minutes, you process the data. That data can be available the next day.
So, Chris, do you think we needed to have something new like drones to get the value out of BIM, to make it something in a collaborative environment to really make this BIM discussion pop?
Honestly, no, we didn't.
What did we need then?
You need a commitment from senior management to implement a very different kind of way of working and methodology than, is traditional in many construction companies. I worked with Colin to write a paper for InterDrone about construction. It's an $8 trillion business, right? It's people build stuff all over the world and they do it in different ways. And BIM has enormous advantages, but it takes a commitment to a way of working. And then drones are a nice add-on. It's a nice way to add another layer of data. I mean, part of what I'm seeing here at the show this week is we're going to start to think more and more about 3D representations of objects, buildings, construction sites, whatever you want, that are linked to other kinds of data that help you manage and make sense out of it, right? So, but I don't think that drones, I think anybody who's saying, well, buy a drone and do BIM, let's do the numbers.
So do you think it's then, as we're talking about a change in mindset that has to happen in a construction company?
Yeah, it's a cultural change that I believe this type of thing is generally driven top down, and I think that people say, hey, McKinsey said what, 80% over budget most of the time, or behind schedule. If you want to change that and be more profitable, I worked with Boeing about 20 years ago on the 777, and it was the first time they'd used 3D design. It was called Working Together, and every single department had to interface, and you had a 3D model that showed where your part or your pipe or your wire intersected with everybody else. Well, why did they do that? They did it because a lot of these companies lose their money on rework.
So where do you think we're headed right now? Just quickly, where's the future of construction headed if we look at all of this? When we look at drones, we look at BIM, we've got just about a minute left. Where do you think we're headed?
Well, so there's visionaries that are doing things, and they're doing 3D modeling. They're actually helping, and drones help in this, in creating a 3D model where I can actually do a walkthrough before I'm actually building or before I'm actually doing, and that allows people to see where there might be a problem in the design phase with a particular thing. So that's one. Some companies are actually doing that. They're implementing that 3D technology. So when I look into the future, that's sort of what I see is this reality walkthrough for the construction.
So that's what we'll see. How about you? What do you think?
I think, that these are powerful tools and people will learn how to use them. They'll learn right tool for the job, what's appropriate. And I think that a lot of companies right now are looking at, is there an ROI case? Is there a business case for this? And the people who are having success with it will do more. The people who are getting trashed by their competitors because they have technology will say, I have to step up. And it's a kind of a classic technology adoption curve like we've seen with a lot of other things over the last 30, 40 years.
They certainly gave us something to think about, right? How will you integrate drones and BIM into your job site? I hope you enjoyed this special edition of Learn It. Today's word of the day, or should I say words of the day, are augmented reality and virtual reality. Otherwise, as you hear them, are AR and VR. AR and VR are often mentioned in the same breath. Many times, they are considered even interchangeable. But in reality, these are some significant differences in both of these technologies. But what's interesting is that they do share many really interesting features. So let's begin with VR. VR actually immerses you in a believable experience, typically via headset, and you've seen a lot of these. And it's created by computers to allow you to interact and explore this 3D experience, all while being isolated from the real world. The reason everyone is so excited about VR is that it gives you this fully immersive, explorable, and interactive 3D computer-created world that takes you to places you might not otherwise be able to go. So think about the Pokemon Go craze during the summer of 2016 that all of us were talking about. This is a technology that layers computer-generated images into the existing world. To help you further think about it, think of those head-mounted displays made popular by Oculus Rift. Now, there are others from, let's say, HTC Vive or Google or Samsung, even Microsoft. AR, on the other hand, inserts virtual objects and information into the real world, augmenting your experience. Now, let's think about it even more. AR takes digital information and puts it into like the physical world. It makes things more possible through the Internet of Things and can even make what we call a digital twin. Now we can leverage AR to overlay images onto the real world view. Now we also see big opportunities to overlay BIM onto real construction job sites. So imagine this. So this could help even detect clashes early. Perhaps an interesting kind of development here is what Daiquiri has done with the Daiquiri helmet. Here, workers can use AR to display a host of relevant job site information and to make operations even more hands-free. Laura and I had a great chance to experience this firsthand earlier this year at a trade show. AR can also be used for training and maintenance and even repairs. Just think of how it can even redefine training as we know it. So this could be a game changer for all of equipment operators. I get really excited about this technology because it can help bridge the gap between generations. And at the core, AR and VR both alter our perceptions of this whole world, and they will both alter the way you work at the job site. AR and VR, those are your words of the day. And thanks for watching Construct Tech TV, where we are talking tech at the job site.